Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle.
Dear students, Rao's IAS Prelims Test Series 2021 is a complete testing and revision course for the upcoming prelims examination. The program will help you prepare for UPSC prelims through a step-up approach. It is a meticulously designed study plan to organize your preparation and keep you on track towards covering the prelims GS and CSAT syllabus extensively from NCERT to the advanced level. The goal of our Prelims Test Series 2021 program is to exhaustively cover all standard sources of study material, including NCERT, with a study plan to test you at par with UPSC level of questions, thereby improving your chances of clearing the prelims examination. To give multiple revision of the entire syllabus from the perspective of civil service prelims pattern, the test series program will also give you the final revision of all topics and themes before the examination through QIP videos and prelims compass notes. The QIP videos or Quality Improvement Program videos are for speedy revision of all important topics for the upcoming prelims examination. QIP videos are kind of crash course for the prelims examination. And prelims compass are 8 subject-wise prelims compilation of all static and current affair topics important for the upcoming prelims. Rao's IAS Prelims Test Series 2021 will include topics test, testing the concept of candidate. It will include thematic test on both the concept and the current affair of that particular theme. It will also include current affair tests covering the monthly current affairs. And there will be full-length test before the final exam to simulate you for the D-Day. There is a link in the description of this video. You can click on the link for registration and to also check out the demo QIP videos.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from a UPSC perspective. Now today let us discuss some of the important news which has appeared in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 22nd December 2020. The news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion from our examination point of view. The first news to be discussed appears on page number 1. The news highlights that House panel moots law to keep a check on private hospitals. Now, according to this news, Parliamentary Standing Committee on Home Affairs has suggested to make a holistic legislation, namely the Public Health Act, to keep a check on private hospitals, especially regarding overpricing during pandemic situations. So in this regard, this news mentions that the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Home Affairs, led by Anand Sharma, has suggested the government to come up with a holistic law, namely the Public Health Act. As such a comprehensive law will allow the government to regulate private hospitals, especially in times of pandemic such as that of COVID-19, as it has been witnessed during the COVID-19 pandemic that private hospitals were charging exorbitant prices, especially with respect to offering their beds. So in such situation, the patients don't have much of a choice when their life is hanging in balance. So in such critical situation, they end up paying the price in order to save life. However, such activities of private hospitals need to be regulated, and thus regulation of private hospitals becomes one of the major recommendations of this committee. Another important aspect highlighted by the committee is that such a law will also prohibit or prevent black marketing of medicines done by various hospitals, and it will also ensure product standardization with respect to various medicines as well as clinical process. Further, the committee also highlighted that such a law will help the government to monitor private hospitals who refuses to accept insurance claims. So in such situation, the patients don't have any other options but to pay such exorbitant amount charged by these private hospitals. Thus, overall, this law will help to regulate private hospitals, especially in times of pandemic, and also the fact that it has been witnessed that they have been charging exorbitant rate or exorbitant price from patients, especially during the pandemic situation. An important point to be highlighted here is that the aspect of public health as well as hospitals and dispensaries comes under state list. However, interstate quarantine comes under union list. So, based on this understanding of union list and state list, let us also go through some of the other important suggestions of this Parliamentary Standing Committee on Home Affairs. Now, one of the important suggestions provided by this committee is with respect to emergency use authorization of COVID vaccine. Now, the committee has noted that the Central Drug Standard Control Organization has so far not given any emergency use authorization with respect to any drugs or vaccine. And regarding the use of COVID vaccine, the committee has suggested that all necessary and mandatory requirements must be duly fulfilled and all trial phases must be properly completed. So, the committee regarding COVID vaccine has suggested that its emergency use authorization, that is, its use during emergency times, should only be authorized or allowed after proper consideration and conducting its trials on a sufficient sample size. So basically, the committee has suggested that before authorizing any emergency use of COVID vaccine, the CDSCO, that is Central Drug Standard Control Organization, must ensure that proper trial is conducted for such vaccine and also ensure that there is no side effects with respect to the use of such vaccine. Now, the committee also noted that during pandemic situations, the public hospitals or the government hospitals bear the maximum brunt as the vulnerable sections of the society cannot afford expensive private hospitals. So, in this regard, the committee has suggested that more funds must be allocated for government hospitals so that they can improve their health infrastructure. And also the fact that they can equip themselves appropriately to handle such pandemic situation in future. Now, another important suggestions made by the committee is to provide cheap medicine at subsidized rate to vulnerable sections of the population in times of pandemic, as it is generally seen that during such pandemic situations the medicines given are very expensive and at times it becomes very much unaffordable for the vulnerable sections of the population, especially the marginalized sections who cannot afford such expensive medicine which is manufactured by drug companies. So the committee has suggested the government to provide such medicines during pandemic to vulnerable sections of the population at subsidized rate. Further, the committee has also suggested the government to hold awareness campaigns on cheaper and effective repurposed medicines to prevent panic buying of expensive drugs by the people, to make COVID treatment cashless for all people having insurance coverage. Another suggestion is to form a separate wing in National Disaster Management Authority which will specialize in handling pandemics like COVID 19 in the near future. Further, the committee has also suggested the government to address problems faced by farmers, non corporates, non farm, as well as small micro enterprises in getting medical insurance coverage. And also the fact that states must ensure that they deliver dry rations or allowances to children who are basically deprived of midday meals due to such pandemic situations. So, these are some of the important suggestions which have been made by the Parliamentary Standing Committee. Now, since we have mentioned about the CDSCO, so you should know that the CDSCO or Central Drug Standard Control Organization is a central drug authority for discharging functions assigned to it under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940. And the major functions of CDSCO includes regulatory control over the import of drugs, approval of new drugs and clinical trials, meetings of Drug Consultative Committee and Drugs Technical Advisory Board, which is constituted under the Drugs and Cosmetic Act. Further, it also gives approval of certain licenses as central license approving authority is exercised by CDSCO. Other major functions of CDSCO includes banning of drugs and cosmetics, oversight and market surveillance, as well as import registration and licensing. So if a question is asked on CDSCO including its functions, then you can highlight these important aspects as mentioned here. Now, this topic becomes important primarily from the perspective of social issues and social justice, and in the prelims gets covered under social sector initiatives, and in the mains gets covered under GS paper 2, especially with respect to statutory and regulatory organizations if such an authority comes into picture, welfare schemes for the vulnerable sections of the population, including such laws as suggested by this parliamentary committee, and also issues relating to health. So, with this discussion, let's move to the next news analysis. The next news to be discussed appears as an article on page number 7. It says humans are still core to digital India. Intermediaries who deliver last mile governance establish the trust between governments and citizens. Now, this article highlights that even though Government of India is moving towards e-governance, however, the importance of last mile delivery of important government schemes cannot be ruled out, and it is here where the role of intermediaries or a cadre of individuals becomes important who actually facilitate the last mile delivery of various government schemes, especially at local level, that is at the panchayat and municipality level. And this is also important for the vulnerable sections of the population. So overall, this article highlights the fact that even with respect to Digital India campaign, government must focus on this cadre of individuals referred as intermediaries in this particular article who are necessary to deliver important government services at citizens' doorsteps. Now, here e governance primarily refers to or is understood as the use of information and communication technology at all levels of the government. And this use of information and communication technology at all levels of the government is done in order to provide services to the citizens, interaction with business enterprises, and communication and exchange of information between different agencies of the government. So, this is basically what we understand as e governance. And use of e governance overall helps in speedy, convenient, efficient, and transparent functioning of the government, and also ensures delivery of government services to the citizens of the country. So it is here where this article says that despite the fact that the government is looking forward to e-governance at all level of governance, still cadre of individuals are necessary. Now, this article says that this cadre of individuals, referred as intermediaries, is necessary in order to ensure last mile delivery of governance, especially for vulnerable sections of the population, for elderly, poor, and women, and also for caste and gender minorities. As at times it becomes difficult for these sections of the population to avail facilities of the government or to avail the benefits of government services electronically. So, this article mentions that these intermediaries overall help or provide additional support, especially with respect to overcoming barriers to enjoy benefits of government services, solving queries of sections of population, especially with respect to government schemes and services, addressing complaints or grievances of these sections of the population by directing them to the correct authorities or to the right authorities so that their grievances are addressed. And overall, this entire process helps in building trust between the government as well as the citizens. Now, this article primarily divides these intermediaries into a political group as well as political group. Now, the purpose of functioning of political intermediaries is basically to cater to their constituencies in order to secure votes for their political party, whereas apolitical intermediaries basically refers to the intermediaries of social group as well as administrative group. Now, with respect to administrative group, these are the kinds of intermediaries or government servants or public servants who deliver government services authorized by the state, who ensure last mile delivery of government services as authorized by the state. Whereas with respect to the social group, we are generally referring to civil societies as well as NGOs who provide various kind of services to the vulnerable sections of the population, not only with respect to ensuring that these vulnerable sections of the population get public benefits, but also provide certain additional benefits to these sections of the society. So the article refers these intermediaries as offline architecture of the state and mentions that this offline architecture of the state is very much necessary even though the government shifts to digital governance. And there are certain suggestions which have been provided in this particular article, especially in order to enhance this offline architecture of the state. The suggestions offered in this article are: first, government must strengthen the intermediaries so that the government ensures last mile delivery of all government services, especially to the vulnerable sections of the population or to such sections of the population for whom such policies have been made. Next, the article says that strengthening the intermediaries will also help in realizing governance outcomes for every state. And these group of intermediaries must be considered as a natural extension of governance model. Further, the article says that there is a need to formalize or rather legalize these intermediaries in order to ensure last mile delivery of government services. So basically, state governments can appoint these intermediaries at local level, that is at panchayat level, in order to ensure that all government services are implemented properly and the benefits of such services reaches to its desired beneficiary. Next suggestion made in this article is that even during the transition towards digitization of governance, government must work with these intermediaries in order to raise citizens' awareness about governance digitization program. In the process, build intermediary skills and capabilities in order to understand digitization of governance itself and also establish governance framework along with a suitable feedback mechanism, as achieving all these cumulatively will help in supporting the process of responsible, responsive, and data driven governance across domains. So, this is what has been explained in this particular article, especially with respect to the importance of intermediaries in achieving last mile delivery of government services. Now, this topic becomes important primarily from the mains perspective under GS paper 2, especially with respect to governance as well as social justice. So, after understanding about the benefits and importance of intermediaries, let's move on to the next news discussion. The next news to be discussed appears as an editorial on page number 6. It says virus variant. Increased transmissibility is one of the more reason to follow non-pharmaceutical interventions. Now, this editorial highlights about the new mutation of the coronavirus N501Y, which has been found to increase binding affinity of the virus with human cells. And this increased binding affinity with human cells make this virus more deadly. Now, this single mutation N501Y, now this mutation N501Y is one of the mutation of the new variant under investigation. Now, the problem is that this particular variant is growing in frequency since November 2020. And because of this growing in frequency, it is responsible for increasing COVID cases in United Kingdom. Further, the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control have also said that this new variant has a potential to increase by zero point 0.4 the number of people a person can infect. Now, one thing we must understand is that COVID is a RNA based virus. Hence, the chances of mutation is always high. Now, when we talk about mutation, we generally refer to changes in the genetic code of the virus. Now, this change in genetic code of the virus leads to change in functions of the new genes in the new variant. And this change in the mutation or change in the genetic code has resulted in increased binding capacity of the new mutation of the coronavirus N501Y. Now, as we all know that the spike protein of the coronavirus binds with ACE2 protein of human cells. So, this new variant of the coronavirus increases the binding capacity of spike protein with ACE2 protein of humans. And this has overall increased the binding capacity of the new variant of the coronavirus. Now, changes in genetic code of the virus also makes identification of the new variant much more difficult. Now, this might also impact vaccination programs in near future. However, as of now, the vaccination program will not be impacted that much. So, the reason for the mutation is because of the RNA virus of COVID 19 and also prolonged infection in a single patient with reduced immunity. Now, immunity plays a very important role in a person's life. So, here the question becomes important that whether this new mutation or this new variant of the virus will impact the vaccination program carried on by different drug manufacturing companies of the world. So, here the editorial says that it is unlikely that the mutations would make the two COVID vaccines which have secured emergency use approval and the ones in final stages of testing less effective. Now, two reasons have been provided as to why it is unlikely that this new mutation of the virus will impact the COVID vaccine program. Number one is that the vaccines produce antibodies against many regions of the spike protein. And second is that there is also T cell immunity that would come into play to clear the virus. So, in this regard, we must first of all understand about the T cell and the B cell immunity. Now, with respect to immunity response in our body, there are basically two types of immunity response. The first is an innate or a jumping immunity response, which is basically to take up the immediate task at hand. And the second is adaptive immunity, which is acquired by the body in the process of fighting infections over a period of time. Now, here the article says that with respect to adaptive immunity, this system consists of two types of white blood cells, namely the B cells as well as the T cells. And both B cells and T cells mounts targeted response. And this targeted response by T cells and B cells is based on molecular details of the virus. Now, this becomes a very important highlight as presented in this article. Now, as you know, that T cells detect virus and kills infected cells, whereas B cells makes antibodies, which is a kind of protein which binds with viral particles and thereby blocks them from entering our cells. So this is how both T cells as well as B cells function as a way of adaptive immunity in our blood system. Now, with respect to adaptive immunity, in an article in New York Times, Yale immunologist explains that this combined action of T cells and B cells, where the response is based on molecular details of the virus, prevents replication of virus and also stops the infection in its tracks. And overall, both T and B cells retain this memory and helps the body to fight the infection later. So according to these immunologists, once T cells and B cells fight a particular virus, then they retain the molecular details of the virus and accordingly has the ability to fight again. That is, if the body is attacked by the similar strain of virus, then T and B cells have the capability to fight back again. So retention of memory about the coronavirus by T cell and B cell will also play an important role with respect to the vaccination program. However, this news highlights that as the virus mutates further, there might be a possibility that the vaccination program might require a minor tweaking. But so far, we are not yet clear what sort of minor tweaking would be required for the new variants of the COVID 19 virus. So, it is in this aspect this editorial highlights that non pharmaceutical interventions such as use of masks as well as social distancing is still necessary to fight this new variant of COVID virus. Now, this topic becomes important from the perspective of general science in your prelims examination and gets covered under GS paper 3 in your mains examination, especially with respect to applications of science and technology and effects in everyday life, indigenization of technology and developing new technology, and awareness in the field of biotechnology. Thus, with this editorial, let's move to the next news of discussion. Now, the next news to be discussed appears on page number 1. It says suspension of insolvency and bankruptcy code extended till March 2021. Now, because of COVID 19 and economic slowdown caused due to COVID 19, this resulted in supply side disruptions, and this made it difficult for MSMEs to repay back their loan. Now, the concern was that such MSMEs who had taken loan might default on their loan, that is, could not repay back the interest. And because of this, such MSMEs would fall under the resolution process of insolvency and bankruptcy code. So, considering the situation, especially of the MSMEs, and as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat package of Government of India, the government decided to suspend fresh initiation of insolvency proceedings under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code for 6 months. And this period of 6 months applied from March 2020 to September 2020. The government further extended this waiver till December 25, 2020. And now the government has further extended this suspension of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code up to 31st March 2021. So overall, No application for insolvency proceedings would take place from March 2020 till March 2021 under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. So, on this note, let us understand certain basic facts about the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Now, earlier, multiple overlapping of laws and adjudicating forums dealing with financial failure and insolvency of companies, individuals, partnership firms in India led to undue delay in the recovery of non performing assets by banks. So, the Government of India legislated the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of 2016 as this law consolidated and amended all the laws relating to reorganization and insolvency resolution of corporate persons, partnership firms, and individuals so that the insolvency process could be completed in a time bound manner. Further, this act also establishes an Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. Now, regarding adjudication proceedings, NCLT, that is National Company Law Tribunal, shall be the adjudicating authority for companies, and Debt Recovery Tribunal shall be the adjudicating authority regarding insolvency proceedings for individuals as well as partnership firms. And the debt recovery tribunals have been constituted under the Recovery of Debts Due to Banks and Financial Institutions Act of 1993. Now, regarding working of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, once there is a default on repayment, then insolvency resolution is initiated either by the debtor or by the creditor. And as already mentioned, that the adjudicating authority for company shall be NCLT, that is National Company Law Tribunal, and for individuals and partnership firms shall be the DRT, that is Debt and Recovery Tribunal. Now, these adjudicating authorities will appoint an insolvency professional who will constitute a committee of creditors. Now, these committee of creditors will be professional people and they will come up with a resolution plan. And if this resolution plan is approved by 66% of votes of all the committee of creditors, then they will come up with a restructuring plan for that particular company. However, if 66% of committee of creditors do not agree for the resolution of the company or restructuring of the finance of the company, then they will finally decide for the liquidation of the company. Now, liquidation of the company here refers to selling the assets of the company. So, this is how the IBC functions. Now, from your prelims perspective, this topic gets covered under economic and social development, and in your mains gets covered under GS paper 3, especially with respect to Indian economy. So, after understanding about IBC, let's move on to the next news of discussion. Now, the next article to be discussed appears on page number 7, and it mentions about Srinivasa Ramanujan, the great mathematician of India. Now, in India, 22nd December is celebrated every year as the National Mathematics Day. And this is celebrated to mark the birth anniversary of Indian mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujan and also to recognize his various achievements in the field of mathematics. Now, in the year 2012, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had declared December 22 to be celebrated as National Mathematics Day in India. And the objective to celebrate National Mathematics Day was to raise awareness among sections of the populations about the importance of mathematics for the development of humanity. Now, Ramanujan was born in 1887 in Tamil Nadu and had no formal pure mathematical education, but still made strides in the field of mathematics, especially regarding number theory, mathematical analysis, continued fractions, and infinite series. And even a movie was made after Srinivasa Ramanujan, namely The Man Who Knew Infinity in 2015. Now, a similar question was asked by UPSC in the year 2016. The question was that a recent movie titled The Man Who Knew Infinity is based on the biography of. So, here the correct answer was A, that is S. Ramanujan. So, in this regard, you should know about Srinivasa Ramanujan and his various achievements in the field of mathematics, and also the fact that December 22 is celebrated in India as National Mathematics Day. Now, National Mathematics Day on December 22 becomes an important aspect with respect to current events of national importance and also with respect to general science regarding the achievements of Srinivasa Ramanujan. So, based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for today. The question is, consider the following statements. First, T cells are part of red blood cells. Second, RNA virus tends to have higher mutation rate. So the question is, which of the statements given above is are correct? Options are A, 1 only, B, 2 only, C, both 1 and 2, and D, neither 1 nor 2. Now coming to the answer of yesterday. The question was, under Article 356, the President may assume which of the following functions to himself. Options were, first, all or any of the functions of the government of the state. Yes, this is correct. Second, all or any of the powers vested in or exercisable by the governor. Yes, this is also correct. And options 3, all or any of the powers of the High Court. No, this option is incorrect. So here the question was, select the correct answer using the code given below. So the correct answer is B, that is 1 and 2 only. So with this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you.